Welcome to R. Pettyrevenge, the perfect place for stories about sweet justice against those who deserve it, especially scam callers who think they can waste our time. Today, I'm sharing my own experience dealing with the endless harassment of scam calls that invaded every part of my day. If you've ever been bombarded by these annoying robocalls, you know the feeling of frustration and helplessness all too well. For months, these scammers had been calling me non-stop. It felt like they were always one step ahead, showing up at the worst possible moments, during work meetings, family dinners, or even when I was just trying to relax. I was fed up with being powerless, so I decided to fight back in a way they never expected. This story isn't just about being annoyed. It's about a clever, petty revenge that turned the tables and made those scammers wish they'd never picked up their phones. Get ready to hear how patience, persistence, and a little mischief helped me win this battle. The scam calls started small but soon became unbearable. Every day I'd get between 10 and 15 calls, sometimes more. They always used spoofed numbers that looked like they were from legitimate U.S. locations, making it hard to know who was really calling. But despite the different numbers, the messages were exactly the same each time. They claimed to be from banks, the IRS, or loan companies, warning me about urgent issues I supposedly needed to fix right away. These calls weren't just annoying, they were disruptive. They'd ring during important work meetings when I couldn't afford distractions, or right in the middle of family time and conversations with friends. I often had to put my phone on silent or ignore calls just to get through the day. The voicemail inbox was constantly filling up with the same automated messages, forcing me to delete hundreds of voicemails multiple times a week just to make room for new ones. What made it worse was knowing these were scams designed to trick me or steal my personal information. The scammer's persistence was exhausting. No matter how many numbers I blocked, more calls kept coming. The repetition and constant interruptions took a toll on my patience and mood. It felt like a never-ending battle where I was the only one losing. Every missed call reminded me of how powerless I was against this flood of scammers invading my life. But little did they know, I was about to turn the tables. One night, while venting about the constant scam calls on Reddit, I stumbled across a comment in R. Pettyrevenge that stopped me in my tracks. Someone claimed they fought back by calling the scammers back, over and over again, and that it actually worked. The idea sounded crazy. How could calling scammers back ever make them stop? Wouldn't they just hang up or block me? Still, the thought was strangely appealing. I kept reading through the comments where others shared stories of patience, persistence, and using different voices to confuse and annoy the scammers. It seemed like a small rebellion against the constant harassment. At first, I was skeptical. Was it really worth the time? But the idea grew on me. I was already annoyed and had little to lose. I decided to give it a try. I mentally prepared myself for what could be a long and tiring process. I planned to call back each scam number, put myself on mute, and listen for a while before hanging up. The goal wasn't to waste their time, but to make the calls annoying enough that they might stop targeting me. This wasn't just about getting revenge, it was about taking back control. With my plan set, I was ready to fight back and see if I could finally silence those scam calls. When I first started calling the scammers back, I wasn't sure what to expect. The plan was simple: answer the call, mute myself, and just listen to what they had to say. I imagined they'd get bored quickly or hang up. Instead, each call became a little adventure. The scammers usually launched right into their scripted pitch, trying to convince me about my loan issue or tax problem. Sometimes they stumbled over their own words, switching between scripts or messing up company names mid-sentence. One scammer even paused awkwardly before saying, "Hello, Mr. OP," as if they'd somehow recognized me. To keep things interesting and confuse them even more, I started changing my voice. Sometimes I used a deep, gruff tone. Other times I tried a high-pitched, cheerful accent, anything to throw them off. I also randomly changed the fake company names I pretended to represent from senior underwriting team to customer support services. The scammers seemed thrown off by these odd switches, sometimes restarting their entire script or asking me to repeat myself. It felt like I was leading a strange, one-sided conversation with a confused robot. I won't lie, the first few calls were exhausting, but also hilarious. There were moments when the scammers clearly weren't sure what to do next, and I could almost hear their frustration through the phone. But part of me wondered, was this really going to work? Would they just keep calling no matter how many times I hung up on them? The suspense built with every call. I was in it for the long haul, ready to keep going as long as it took to make them stop. After a few dozen calls, I realized I needed to step up my game. I started calling back multiple times a day, sometimes hitting the same scam number dozens of times within an hour. I put myself on mute each time and just let them talk. At first, the scammers seemed almost robotic, repeating the same phrases with little variation. But as the calls piled up, their scripts started to break down. They'd get confused, sometimes slipping between different scripts mid-sentence or pausing awkwardly, clearly unsure what to say next. On several occasions, a scammer called me by name, Mr. OP, which sent a thrill through me. I knew they were trying to personalize the scam, but it also showed they were paying attention. Sometimes they even hung up abruptly, but just for a moment before calling right back again. Each call became a battle of wills. The scammers' voices grew more frustrated and less confident, and I felt a small victory every time they messed up. I kept switching accents, from Australian to Indian to a Mid-Atlantic American, and swapped fake company names constantly. This seemed to throw them into a tailspin. There were moments of awkward silence where neither side knew what to say, and I could almost imagine their faces scrunching in confusion. With every passing call, I noticed their behavior change. The usually confident, fast-talking scammers were now hesitant, sometimes even hang up immediately after answering. The suspense was building. I was getting to them. This wasn't just a prank anymore. It was my slow, steady reclaiming of peace. Then came call number 260. I was beginning to think maybe the scammers would never give up, but this time, something different happened. After a few seconds of silence on my end, a deep, commanding voice finally spoke. A voice that sounded like it belonged to the boss. It was low, serious, and clearly annoyed. "Mr. OP, you've got to stop with these spam calls," the voice said. "Seriously, you need to find something better to do with your time." I couldn't believe it. The tables had turned. Here was the big boss, the mastermind behind the endless scam calls, telling me to stop. The sheer absurdity of the moment made me grin from ear to ear. I fought back laughter as I thanked him for the message and quietly hung up. For the first time in months, I felt like I had won. That call was the turning point. After that, the scam calls slowed down dramatically. The relentless harassment finally eased up. I was riding high on that small but sweet victory. It was proof that patience and a little creativity could beat even the most annoying scammers. In the end, it wasn't just about getting revenge. It was about reclaiming my peace and showing that sometimes the best weapon against harassment is cleverness. Almost immediately after that final boss call, the flood of scam calls dried up. The relentless ringing that had invaded my work meetings, dinners, and quiet moments was gone. For the first time in what felt like forever, my phone was peaceful. No more spoofed numbers from different U.S. locations. No more identical voicemails that I dreaded deleting. It was as if my little campaign of patience and persistence had broken the cycle. The relief was overwhelming. I no longer felt anxious about answering the phone or worried about missing an important call buried beneath a sea of spam. My focus at work improved, and I could actually enjoy time with friends and family without constant interruptions. The stress that had been slowly building for over a year finally lifted. This experience taught me something powerful: the importance of taking control. Instead of just being a passive target, I became active in reclaiming my peace of mind. It was empowering to know that sometimes the best way to fight back isn't by blocking numbers or relying on technology, but by outsmarting the problem directly. And yes, a little bit of petty revenge felt pretty satisfying too. The calls haven't come back since that day, and I'm still riding that wave of victory. It's a small win in a world full of annoyances, but it means everything to me. Sometimes the simplest actions make the biggest difference. Looking back, this whole experience was about more than just revenge. It was a lesson in patience, persistence, and creativity. It took hundreds of calls, a lot of mental energy, and a good sense of humor to keep going. But the payoff was worth it. It reminded me that you don't have to accept harassment as your fate. Sometimes you can take the situation into your own hands and change the game. Sharing my story on Reddit added an unexpected layer to the journey. I didn't expect it to resonate with so many people, but seeing others relate and share their own battles against scammers made me feel part of a larger community. It's comforting to know we're not alone in dealing with these frustrating nuisances. That said, I want to remind everyone to stay vigilant. Scammers are clever and persistent, and they'll find new ways to bother you if you let your guard down. But don't be afraid to get creative. Whether it's calling them back, using humor, or just staying firm, taking action can make a real difference. To anyone out there struggling with scam calls or other petty annoyances, keep fighting, keep laughing, and know that sometimes a little patience and creativity go a long way. Thanks for joining me here on r/Pettyrevenge. If you've ever had a moment where you turned the tables on someone bothering you, scammers, rude neighbors, or anyone else, I'd love to hear your story. Sharing these little victories not only feels good, but it also reminds us all that sometimes justice comes in small, satisfying packages. Don't forget to subscribe and follow for more Reddit tales of clever payback. Every week, there's a new story packed with surprises, laughs, and the kind of revenge that makes you smile. Stay sharp out there, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is just a phone call away. Catch you in the next episode. That wraps up today's episode of r/Payback. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories.